Hello?
My brother's attacking my family.
Your dad is attacking your family?
No, my brother.
These were the terrifying words of 12-year-old Daniel James Beaver as he pleaded with the authorities to rescue him from his two older siblings, who were violently rampaging through their home, murdering everyone inside. But less than 60 seconds after the emergency call began, Daniel's voice could be heard crying out and pleading for mercy, until the line abruptly went silent. Officers reached the location swiftly and were met with a horrifying sight that had unfolded throughout the residence. Blood was splattered across the front steps, and a faint voice calling for assistance could be heard within. The plea came from 13-year-old Crystal Beaver, but everyone else in the household, except for 2-year-old Autumn, had been slain.
One of these surviving Bever children, a 13-year-old girl, saying her brothers were fascinated by mass killings for at least a year.
Authorities heard a disturbance near the rear entrance of the residence and found offenders Robert and Michael Beaver drenched in blood, grinning as if they were pleased with their actions. Robert was chuckling and informed officers that taking multiple lives had made him feel like a deity. Sadly, Robert's questioning footage was never made accessible to the public, but 15-year-old Michael's is entirely available and offers some perspective into what motivated these brothers to carry out such a savage act.
I was hoping maybe you could kind of just go back at the beginning when all this started and kind of tell me what happened.
A couple months ago, we started talking about rampage and stuff like that.
Okay.
I didn't take it seriously at first, but then he started buying like body armor and stuff.
Where did he buy body armor from?
eBay and Amazon.
Robert's bedroom was discovered stocked with weapons and protective gear, including machetes, survival knives, and blades. Reportedly, they had been amassing all of it for several months. However, when their sister Crystal informed their mother about it, she casually dismissed the concern, saying it was typical behavior and nothing to be alarmed about. She couldn't have been more mistaken.
Guns. Where did he start buying guns from?
He bought them online. I think the website's like Bud's Gun Shop, and he bought 2 Glocks, 2 Glock 41, and a shotgun. I forget, it's like a Moss Boot, I think. Then he bought 250 shotgun rounds on eBay. Then I think he bought close to 1,000 rounds for the Glocks.
Wow, okay.
Where was he supposed to pick those?
The ammunition was being shipped to the house.
Blades and machetes were one thing, but firearms and over 1,000 rounds of ammo were an entirely different issue. So once they had it delivered to their home, they understood their parents couldn't be present when it showed up. What was the purpose of gathering all these arms? It doesn't require 1,000 bullets to take the lives of 5 individuals. As it turns out, the brothers had a far larger scheme in mind.
More about making plans and what you guys talked about.
Making plans, we all plotted every night.
Why did he want to do it?
Because he just, says he hates everyone. He thinks society is pointless. And so he wanted to, beat, amount of other famous people like Columbine and James Egan Holmes.
So did you guys have a goal? Did you have a number?
He just wanted, I think he wanted to kill 50.
Okay.
The two brothers stayed up into the night on most occasions, conversing and plotting, and once they discovered they both had a separate fascination with killing, the course was set, and in their eyes, there was no going back. The siblings had built a connection over the years due to their household environment. Their parents, April and David Beaver, were reportedly somewhat harsh toward their kids. They were educated at home and even instructed not to socialize with children outside their own family. This left them isolated with their own thoughts much of the time, and their only understanding of the outside world was the one they had constructed in their own minds. This is how they developed such a grim view of society and what led them to create the next step in their plan.
You picked a date, you said.
Yeah, which was yesterday night. That was the date.
How did you pick the date?
We were vaulting out with the packages and stuff would be out. Because, all the ammunition, he didn't want them to see that. So we wanted to kill everyone at the house first.
Okay.
And then wait for all the packages to show up over the weekend. And then we'd take the Yukon and we'd have our state with the guns.
So their scheme was finalized. Michael even mentioned their intention was to chop up and dismember their family's corpses and conceal them in containers while they camped out, awaiting the arrival of the firearms. He even included the horrific detail that they spared Autumn only because they had intended to behead her with an axe a short time later. But naturally, all of these elaborate plans crumbled at the very first obstacle. So what exactly occurred that evening which led everything to unravel for the brothers? The killings began with Crystal, who had walked into their room at 11:30 p.m. on July 22, 2015, only to find them suiting up in tactical gear and armed with blades. Michael coaxed her toward his computer, and Robert cut her throat from behind.
So she fell down and started screaming.
Yeah, Robert kept stabbing her. I kind of freaked out because, and then my mom came in and she started yelling, call the police, get Dad. And then he came over and started attacking her.
So he stabbed your mom with the same knife?
Yep, same knife.
And where did he stab her?
I think in the neck too.
At that moment, Crystal had succeeded in getting to her feet and staggering out the door in a desperate attempt to flee. But Michael swiftly chased after her and pulled her back indoors.
Yeah, she was still screaming. And then that's about the time Dad came down. They got a little bit of a fight, but then eventually Robert got him down,
Did he cut his throat too?
The three oldest members of the household were now completely incapacitated, with their parents killed and Crystal's throat slashed, bleeding on the front steps. That left only their four younger siblings, the ones they believed would offer the least resistance. This is also where we pick back up with the earlier part of the story, as Daniel is on the phone with authorities, hiding in his bedroom.
Sitting on the phone with the police, I grabbed the phone, which is my phone, got my phone, and then I ran into the kitchen and I smashed the underground.
Which was your phone?
Yeah, it was my phone.
Now you don't have a cell phone anymore.
Soon after, Daniel was stabbed 21 times in the back, shoulder and chest. The final two victims had been hiding in locked rooms, but Michael succeeded in persuading them that Robert was also attacking him. This tricked them into coming out, and the brothers completed their assault by once again stabbing 6-year-old Christopher and 5-year-old Victoria to death. Throughout the interrogation, however, Michael consistently shifted a significant portion of the blame onto Robert, even claiming at times that he was merely standing by while Robert carried out the killings, and that he was only involved from the beginning because he knew Robert was going to go through with it regardless, and he wanted to stay on his good side.
I couldn't do it, so I was going to let him, kill everyone.
Yeah, but you stabbed somebody in the neck. I mean,
I just kind of...
How do you feel about what you've done now?
I didn't like it.
I mean, how do you feel about your mother? You watched her get stabbed, you cut her throat yourself, and you watched her bleed all over the place and scream. How does that make you feel?
Think about it.
Regrettably, during his interrogation, Robert showed absolutely no hesitation in revealing the complete truth and nothing but the truth, ultimately alerting the authorities that Michael might have played a bigger role than he initially claimed.
The guys that are interviewing Robert kind of gave me a quick version of what he's saying that you did.
Yeah.
And you haven't told me everything, okay? So I know you're not being completely honest. I'm just one of hundreds of people that are gonna look at this thing. We got the state police coming in, and every single stab wound that you inflicted, we're gonna know about. Everybody's been stabbed, and you both had knives, and we know you both stabbed everybody. So you guys are kind of at the same level. Who's gonna be honest and make this right? And who's a liar? Okay, which one do you wanna be?
As is often the case, this straightforward tactic was all the authorities needed to prompt Michael to speak up and ultimately admit to being just as involved in the killings as Robert. Michael confessed to slashing Crystal and his mother's throats, as well as stabbing Christopher to death. As is typical, one admission led to another, offering an even deeper look into the minds of these disturbed teenagers.
You only stabbed your family because they were in the way towards the bigger plan?
They were in the way and, higher count.
This higher count, I'm confused. Is this a game?
It's kind of become famous, kind of good.
It now becomes entirely clear that the killings truly weren't personal in any way, and the sole motivation behind this massacre, and any future ones, was simply for attention and notoriety. This was made even more apparent when a search of the house uncovered active surveillance cameras and storage devices containing all of their plotted details. Robert later disclosed that they intended to create 2 videos, one to mock the police and another to upload online. The remainder of Michael's interrogation footage shows him drafting a written statement, which sadly was never made public. But whatever he wrote must have been deeply disturbing, as the investigator monitoring him couldn't even finish reading it and reacted like this. Naturally, during the trial, neither of the brothers had much of a chance, though Michael tried to enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, things didn't turn out well for either of them, and both were sentenced to 5 life terms without the chance of parole. The surviving siblings, Crystal and Autumn, were later adopted by the same family. But the truth remains that this once large, though isolated household now lives on only as a dark tale etched into the conscience of every resident in the formerly tranquil town of Broken Arrow.